There, I did. I
You should.
got it this time.
Okay.
Welcome to the Modeling Lifestyle, where we celebrate how modelers have embraced their modeling and friendships as a lifestyle. We discuss how modeling can become a life passion and lead to lifelong friendships. The goal of the modeling lifestyle is to preserve the modeling and interests of leading modelers and the modeling industry. The modeling lifestyle is sponsored by NGMC, who believes that through bringing hobbyists together with both information and modeling, the hobby will grow stronger with more model builders than ever. NGMC, which started as narrow gauge modeling company, is focused in 1/4 inch scale across hobbies. NGMC is a market leader in 1/4 inch scale with a range of products from over 50 vendors. In 2021, NGMC became the largest reseller of out-of-production model paint in North America with over 9,000 bottles in stock. And now to Jim Kellow, MMR, host of the Modeling Lifestyle.
I love the sound of a whistle.
Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. We really do appreciate it. Our show introduces you not just to great modelers, but modelers who have made significant contributions to our hobbies. And also, model railroading has become a major part of their lives. I want to thank so much the people that are joining us live on our YouTube channel, New Tracks Modeling. And please feel free to use the chat function. And as soon as we find out that you've asked a question or made a comment on the chat function, we'll have it brought into the show so that our guests can answer your question or deal with your comment. Tonight, I want to introduce you to a really outstanding modeler by the name of Martin Brechbiel, MMR. Martin is not only talented as a model builder, but makes major contributions and has all his life to our hobby of model railroading. He's an editor, he's an author, he's participated in the region, he participates in the NMRA activities, and he's done most of the things that we would hope any model railroader might take a chance and participate in. So it's really my honor to introduce you to Martin Brechbiel, MMR. Martin, welcome.
Thank you, Jim. I'm not so sure about all my life. I mean, there were some early years where I don't know that I actually ever played with trains, but crawling around on the carpet like most adults, but I grew into it. Let's put it that way.
Well, I stand corrected, sir. How about telling us a little bit about your background and who Martin Brechbiel is?
Oh, well, that's very complicated. I'm a lot of people, and I've worn a lot of different hats, and I have a professional career, which I don't want to go into too much, that I'm retired from as of about, 6 years. Shocking. But I'm still active in that career, unlike most people who retire, I'm still connected to it with an emeritus position and an editorship in a professional area. But as you said, I'm also the editor of a modeling magazine. I've been a model train enthusiast for on and off 45, 50 years. We'll discount the first 10. And maybe 10 or 15, maybe 20 in the middle, because there's these things called family and children and career and housing and minor stuff that get in the way of model railroading. But it comes back if you're lucky, and then you can do things and have fun with it. So I've been an O-scale modeler 20, 25 years, give or take a little. So
What drew you to model railroading? I mean, there's a lot of hobbies out there. Why model railroading?
Well, I grew up sort of around trains in some ways, because I was always interested in trains, because when I lived with my grandparents up in Pennsylvania, one of the main lines for, I guess, when I was young enough, it might have been Pennsylvania Railroad, and then Penn Central, and then whatever came after. And that main line is still there, double track main line. And I could sit on the back porch and watch the trains go by, hear them coming. massive drags and stuff. You could hear them well in advance. They announce themselves, and you could sit there and watch them go by. But even better, out the front door, across the street, at the lumber yard and coal yard, massive building that's no longer there, there was a spur, and you could watch them switching the cars, dropping off coal, lumber, all hours of the day. And right outside the door, even closer, was the remnants of the Cumberland Valley Railroad track, which hadn't been in the town, going through the center of town since 1920, 1910, somewhere in there. They moved the station, and the original station was 2 blocks down the street towards the center square of the town. So I've always had that's one part of that. The going up to our house in the woods, the cabin in the woods was my grandparents. You crossed over the remnants of the South Mountain branch of what was the South Mountain branch of the Cumberland Valley Railroad, which at that time was terminating in Leymasters, Pennsylvania, which very much influenced my modeling, because I have my version of Leymasters on my layout. But I remember having to stop there with my grandparents and watch the train cross the highway there. I use the word highway very, very loosely. And you could see the trains go into the grain elevator that's still operational there. It's all gone. All the track is gone. You can still see the roadbed, raised roadbed through there, but there are scattered remnants of that line. So that's what I actually sat with me and stayed with me as influencing my own layout. That particular little branch of that railroad, which ran all the way up to Harrisburg and down into West Virginia. So that got me into model railroading. That's really underneath of it all.
So really being around the prototype is what drew you to model railroad.
Well, just seeing it and knowing the tracks were there and the history, the past. I mean, that's an old railroad originally, and all the history and the old town or my grandparents, it's family and just immediate exposure.
Yep. Now you mentioned O scale. Is that the scale you've always modeled in, or have you tinkered in others, or what?
I may have built 5 HO models. The impetus being, I can't get this in O scale, so I need to build the HO version so I can translate it as I go into O scale, because I want an O scale one. In some cases, I have absolutely no real need or purpose to having that O scale model. I just wanted one, and I wanted to build it. And I'd say 2 out of 5 times, once completed, I would look at the model and say, okay, I'm done. That's good. Now what? It can go away now. I've satisfied that itch. I've scratched that itch. It's done. One of them being, what was it? The Ambroid, one of the Ambroid kits that was never made in O scale. So I want one of those just for fun. Once done, move on. Next in the line.
Funny that you talked about that. I appreciate your reaction to this question. What you say is exactly how I build now. I'll find a photo or I'll see something and I'll say, oh, I got to have that. And then I'll scale it and I'll build it in O scale.
Right.
Have you heard other people talk like that? Because until you mentioned it and started talking about it tonight, I had never really thought about that. But I wonder if other O scale modelers, I wonder if they feel the same way. I wonder if that's how they get some of their models going.
I suspect there are more than we know who do just that. We don't, and I don't know that it's actually limited to O scale. I mean, they see a picture and they're like, I want one of those. Well, if you're going to wait for someone to produce it as a kit, you're going to be very, very, very old in all likelihood. So your best bet is to get to the bench, and build one. That's pretty much how I do it. And but again, I build it, and then once completed, I'm done. My thrill is need is fulfilled once it's been built.
Got it. I totally understand. All right, how would you describe your interest in model railroading, Martin? What particular part of model railroading really interests you?
Basically, it's the creativity part. I get to do whatever I want. I can build whatever I want. It's up to me. I'm not driven by operations. I'm not necessarily, I'm very rarely a prototype modeler. I'm doing more stuff that I look at and say, oh, what I ask the question, what if? And then proceed to go to my workbench and answer the question by building the answer to that. And sometimes that comes out, and you'll probably see that in more than a few of the models. So yeah, that's where that goes, I think.
Okay. Well, a lot of people know that you're a great modeler, but a lot of people may not have seen any of your models. So let's take a look at a couple of them and maybe have you tell us a little bit about each one of them.
Oh, okay. So this was a fairly early model, roughly, well, almost 20 years ago, at least. I wanted a vinegar tank car. I have a good reason for it, but at the same time, I realized I'm never going to be able to afford the brass one. Well, without taking a second mortgage out on the house and maybe selling some body parts. But I thought, I can build one of these. I've got the plans. And the plans of these are actually readily available. All the vinegar and pickle car plans are fairly readily available. You can find a lot of these. And this kicked off a couple of things, actually. So I built this car, wrote the article that goes with it. And I think this was the first article I sent into O-Scale Trains magazine. This was, I don't know, 2003, 2006, somewhere in there. I don't know. 20 years ago, give or take a bit. Somewhat apprehensively, I sent it in, not knowing what was going to happen. I have no idea why I was apprehensive about this. My other existence is in the publish and perish universe. I've published hundreds of technical articles. I've only ever had one of them rejected outright, but I didn't know what to expect with this. This was a whole new arena. So I built this car, had a lot of fun with it. It sits behind the pickle plant. When it's on the layout, it sits behind the pickle plant on my layout. So it has purpose in that regard. And it got published in O-Scale Trains magazine. And I said, cool, I can do this too. Even better, I enjoyed writing this. This was not work. This was recreational writing. If the two words can be used in the same sentence together, I use it as such. I found this to be relatively easy to write. Okay, so I'm somewhere way off the bell curve on writing articles. I accept that because I find it terribly easy. In fact, I wrote one this morning while just puttering about. But I just thought, wow, I can relax with this. I can have fun with it. I can build a model that I enjoy building. I can write the article and I can get it published. What better is, what a great combination of events and a chain that would really satisfy a lot of check marks on the list of what makes model railroading fun for me. Not only that, you even get paid for getting something published. What a concept. So, you not a lot, you're not going to retire wealthy on writing articles for the model train literature, but it's kind of, seeing your name in print, byline, never gets old for me. Never has after 45 years. And I'm still writing. It's just where I have fun. So that's where that model, it's a scratch build car, a lot of fun, a lot of interesting parts, not terribly difficult. The hardest part about this were the decals. I was lucky enough to find a set. These are Walther's decals that were probably almost as old as me. They
What
worked.
material did you use, Martin?
Oh, this is almost all wood.
Got it.
Almost all wood, with the exception of the obvious metal parts.
Right.
And that's the pickle plant. It is named after or inspired by, as well, by my grandmother, Lawther's Perfect Pickles.
Mm.
This also got published in No Scale Trains magazine. This was a board by board scratch build, right down to the stud walls. There are individual clapboards on this, and there's stud walls, and there's full interiors on both levels of this building. And that roof comes off. The inside second level has all kinds of stuff in it and storage. There's actually an elevator built into the one end. There's a full first floor as well for processing pickles and cleaning them, copper formed bays, and nice ladies all in a row working hard. And there's a wagon load of pickles being delivered right now, right out front, and two guys wasting their time playing checkers on the porch. So this is actually on my layout, and it's there's a two-part article in No Scale Trains. It's on the cover. I've forgotten what issue. This is actually a lift out. This whole scene comes out of my layout, and there are three replacement scenes yet to be built. Someday I'll get around to them. I've started the one. If I ever get bored with this, I could take the entire scene out and drop in a replacement scene. So we'll no longer have a pickle plant, a pickle industry, anything like it. It'll be something completely different in that space. The only thing that's been stopping me is finding a place to put this when I take it out.
That's neat.
Yeah, this is one of my trolleys. This actually got me my motive power for the AP. As a line car. This one has an interesting history, is that I actually threw this car away prior to building it, the parts of it, threw it away at least 3 times into the trash can in my workshop, basically completely dissatisfied with it, not knowing what to do with it, and in frustration, dropping it in the trash can. It came back out, it went back in, it came back out, it went back in, at least 2 times that I remember. There might have been a third. I went off to the MER Regional Convention, the NMRA in Hagerstown, and rifling through a box of photographs in the room of stuff for sale, I found a picture of very close to this car. And the light bulb went on, and I to myself, and I thought, I know what I put in the trash can. It's this car. Did I put the trash out to be picked up? Was my immediate worry. Well, rather than calling home and asking my wife to go downstairs into my shop and root around in my trash can, I thought better of that. I just was patient. Sunday afternoon when I got home, I ran down the steps, pulled it out and said, I've got it. I know what you are. And the fun thing about this car, other than being a really interesting car, is that work platform is actually hinged. It actually flattens. It folds up on the roof. It's in the extended position right now, but there's little working hinges on that, the little stops that keep it in place. So it actually flattens out. And as I said, this got me this was my second car. This one's one of the scratch built ones. So
Gorgeous. That's a beautiful model. Really is. Have you still got the plans for that?
Plans?
You don't have plans? You have a photo of the original?
As you call plans. Photo, I'd have to root around for it.
I'm lazy. I'd like to try to build that though. That's a cute model.
If I'm lucky, I have a photo usually it's in between my ears where I keep the photo because
I got you. I understand.
if I draw a plan, I'm done.
Those are some beautiful models, no question about it. But before we see some more of them, let's bring in some of your friends to join us. Try to get a better picture, rounded picture of who Martin Brechbiel is.
Oh boy.
So one of your friends is Kurt Thompson. So Kurt, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Can you tell us a little bit about who you are and how you met Martin?
Well, I'm Kurt Thompson. I'm a master model railroader as well from the MER. I met Martin probably in the early 90s when I was traipsing from Annapolis over to the Potomac Division meetings for a while. And then I too went into the family hiatus for a while. And then got back into the active division level stuff in 2008 when the Chesapeake Division was resuscitated from the Mount Clair Division. And I allowed myself to get hamstrung as the division superintendent for 5 years. And all the time while I was there, Martin was chirping in my ear going, get your replacement, between him and Clint Hyde. Okay, one in each ear. And so when I finally got out of division level management, I took a small hiatus and then was dragged to the regional level, where I served as vice president for a couple of years and then as region president for 4 years. And Martin served on the board both as he was a director and he was also regional contest chair. And so Martin was helpful with me in administering the business side of the hobby at the region level. And for that, I was really grateful. Among a lot of people, I came to it with limited experience at the region level, but managed to have a good staff around me. And Martin was one of the leading pieces of that staff that kept the region going. And it's still going strong. So, and Martin also is on the backside of it is he's, as he said, he's the editor of a train magazine, and I converted from HO after many years to O scale. And Martin wrangled me into being a 3-time a year out of a 6-issue year, 3 alternate issues a year of writing a column as the new guy on the block called the Neophyte Modeler. And though I enjoyed the small money that comes from writing, I write a lot anyway. But mainly it kept me busy and active building my layout because I was also on a schedule, Martin's schedule for publication. So, and that's how I met Martin, although I did get to help him out because while he was not yet an MMR, he was like, I don't understand how the AP dispatching certificate works. And he said, I know you have it because you chirp about it. And so it ended up being, I went over to Martin's house, went over and sat down with him and went over paperwork. And he said, if I'm having this much trouble figuring this out, you need to do a clinic. And so right now there's a canned clinic that goes up at the MER occasionally at the conventions on making sense out of the AP dispatchers paperwork. And Martin ended up getting his dispatcher's AP, and he got it because I showed him how, which was part of a lot of it is many people read too much into the requirements. And my job, as I'm currently the MER manager for the region, is to tell them to quit reading it like it's a tech manual. It's a very simple little document. And I spend more time unwinding people than winding them up. And that's how I've known Martin. And it's been a good friendship, for me anyway, for the interval period.
Well, that's fantastic. Very nice to meet you. Thank you for joining us tonight, and feel free to jump in anytime, because we can't just let Martin do all the talking.
I'm going to not leap to that comment.
All right. Well, the next person I want to introduce is Jack Doodle. I tried, Jack. I swear to God, I tried. It's Jordal, right?
Jottle.
John. Well, second time was closer, Jack, and I do apologize.
Right.
It's a joke if nobody knows about it. Every time I've introduced Jack in my lifetime, I've never even come close. This is probably as close as I've gotten for a while. So, Jack,
I've been called lots of things. Don't worry.
I apologize again. I'm trying. Anyway, Jack, can you tell us a little bit about who you are and how you relate to Martin?
Sure. I retired about 3 or 4 years ago from a career in real estate and banking. And I had always had an interest in trains, having grown up near the Boston and Maine lines in Massachusetts. So I had some very elementary layouts and modeling back in the early years. I joined the NMRA just before I moved to North Carolina in 2005. And right off the bat, I got active in going to the Philadelphia National Convention that was mentioned earlier. And, going to almost all the region conventions since 2005, and been active in my local division at the administrative level, picking up on Kurt's theme. I've been a director working with Kurt and Martin in that position. I've been the editor and current proofreader of the MER newsletter. I've been co-chairman of the MER convention back in 2016. And again, I am co-chairman of the 2024 convention coming up in Durham, North Carolina. So mark your calendar for September 26th to 29, 2024. I'll get the little ad in. Can't promote it too early. At the division level, been very active as clerk and newsletter editor and proofreader, and organizing various lunches and prototype tours and such. So I've been very active in those administrative capacities. On the modeling side, when I retired, I got more seriously into my favorite part of the hobby, which is really building structures. So I created a small craftsman kit business called Ipswich Hobbies. And we'll see a couple of those photographs in a little bit. But that keeps me off the street, keeps me up here in my upstairs former attic, now man cave, keeps me out of my wife's hair, and she always knows where I am. I'm either gallivanting with trained friends, or I'm up here working on models or some kind of a train writing. And how I know Martin, I've known Martin probably since 2005. I mean, I've gone to just about every clinic that he's taught. I was on the board with him, MER board of directors. And I've done a lot of contest judging with Martin. I was even one of the evaluators of his scenery certificate on his own layout way back when. Remember Dave and Michelle and me did your AP scenery? Yeah, that was a while ago. And coming up, I will, effective March of 2024, I will be the editor of the Boston and Maine Historical Society newsletter called Modeler's Notes. So it keeps me busy.
Well, that's great. That's fantastic. I mean, you made such a contribution, and I know we've got some photos. So if we could see some of the photos that.
Sure.
Yeah,
This is my first. This is my first. Yeah. This is Goldston Depot. This is my first North Carolina prototype model. Yeah. About 10, I guess 15 miles from where I live, there's a New Hope Valley Railway. And they relocated this beat up old structure, and they've renovated that, and that's now on their campus for their 1-to-1 scale model train operation.
Right.
So that came out several years ago, and it's a very nicely detailed model.
Absolutely.
And yeah, the next one up this is my very first kit release under my Ipswich Hobbies branding. This is the prototype for this is the Rockport Freight House in Rockport, Massachusetts. That's what really got me started in trying to create my own kits. Because I had photographed this building almost every year for probably 10 years. And it just keeps deteriorating. It hasn't quite fallen down yet. It's still there. And I want to capture that in a kit form before it totally disappeared. And this one is one of the 2 kits that you will see, Craftsman kits, that I used to qualify for my AP Structures certificate. This is BTS, a Better Than Scratch American flag building, if it rings a bell with anybody. And in my commutes into Boston, I used to drive by Cabot Stains. You probably heard of that company. They make various stains. Go to the hardware store, you buy stains. It's Cabot Stains. So I turned this into a Cabot Stains building, just sort of a celebration of a long gone factory that was near my commute into Boston. And this here, I just finished a clinic on this at our local division about a week ago. This is the Fine Scale Miniatures kit number 55 called Cold Dock. And this is the second of 2 of the AP structure kits that went toward my AP Structures Award. And shown the Cold Dock just to illustrate the complexity, the weathering, the stains, all the added details and such. There's over 900 parts there, but it was a fun build. And my hat's off to Martin. As I mentioned earlier, I've been to many of Martin's clinics, and I've seen him quite often on New Tracks, and I read his articles in O Scale magazine and the Potomac Flyer and the MER, the local newsletter. So I'm very familiar with Martin's builds and his writings. One of his clinics was on scratch building a flat car, I guess it was. And so I dug my frame. I got as far as the frame and the deck. So I dug that out of the box and I said, I think I can probably start my AP cars. I've got 6 certificates. I need 1 more. So I'm going to be doing AP cars. Says, well, let me start on this one. And I dug up Martin's old magazines and all of his build articles, looked at a few of his New Tracks videos, and it got me going on. And that's one of them that I've started. That's still needs to be scored, but that's the flat car with a load that I'll be doing. And it's O scale. It's the first time I built an O scale model. And by the way, I did assembly line. I built 4 of these. Because my logic was that even if they don't get 88 points, 87.5 points, I'll at least get credit for having 4 different scratch built cars. So there's one. And I think the next one up is the gondola. Yeah. So that's my second O scale build that I'm working on. And these 2 should be ready for scoring pretty soon. So thank you, Martin, for that inspiration. What's up now? I have an HO scale layout. Presently, it's just 30 inches by 16 feet. I'll be doubling that this coming year, so I can have it open as a layout tour at our September 2024 convention. Did I mention that we have a convention coming up on September 26th to 29, 2024 in Durham, North Carolina? Did I say that yet? Okay. But this is a great scene because it shows one of my prototype would be 1956 era. But B&M, Boston, Maine, had 4 bascule bridges, 2 tracks each. 2 of them eventually burned down, and there's 2 remaining, and they're eventually going to be replaced. But this scene, if you know the area, the Charles River goes through here, through the bascule bridge, past a canal into the greater Charles River Basin between Cambridge, Mass. And Boston. And the Museum of Science is right on that Cambridge Street. So this view captures that whole scene, the bascule bridge, the bridge at Cambridge Street, and the Museum of Science. And what's really neat about this is you're familiar with the duck boat tours in various cities. Well, Boston has duck boat tours. So my modeling friend, Rob Russo, was on a duck boat tour of the Charles River in Boston. And he took some photographs of the Museum of Science from the boat. And I took one of his photographs, and he had Office Max size it for me. And there it is. It's in the background of that scene.
I'll be darned.
The only thing wrong with it is it's backwards. The planetarium is actually on the left side of the building, but we won't tell anybody. They'll never notice. Next up is, unlike probably most people who go for the AP Scenery certificate, they probably build a layout and then have it judged. Well, I had a lot of ideas for my own layout, Boston, Maine themed. The terminal division was what I'm focusing on. But I needed to have a showcase for some of my craftsman kits, and I build a lot of other manufacturers' craftsman kits. But I also needed to incorporate a lot of the other aspects required for an AP Scenery. So instead of having my Boston Sand and Gravel industry here, I just created a town scene. So it's totally fictional, but it works. It gave me a lot of structures and streets and weathering and hillside and whatnot. And the next up is more of the layout, showing the double track. Back into the distance on this view is North Station. I have just a Waller's kit as a temporary stand-in for North Station. Eventually, there will be a scratch-built North Station model back there. And as I said earlier, I've only got 30 inches to work with, so I use a lot of background flats. And a couple of examples here of just a street scene with some of my smaller scratch-built structures, craftsman structures. The opposite end of that clam box is a kit originally put out by Bollinger, and my family knew the owners of the clam box, so I had to get that kit on the layout. I guess that's it. So,
well, Jack, thank you so much for sharing some photos of your modeling with us and for here this evening.
My
now
pleasure.
Let me turn to our next guest friend, Jim Murphy. Mr. Murphy, welcome.
Oh.
Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Can you tell us a little
Thank
bit?
you. It's absolutely great to be here. And
Well, who is Jim Murphy, and how did you meet Martin?
Well, I came south. My accent, of course, is a little bit like Jack's. I'm also from Massachusetts, and that filters in occasionally, but that's the start of the layout. But when I moved to North Carolina a little over 30 years ago, of course, the layout had to come with me in pieces. It was modular then. So I started to take some of the structures that I had had on the layout, and back in the early 2000s, someone said, well, Murph, you ought to really take one of those structures and put it on a contest table. I said, well, I've never entered a contest for these things. So they said, oh, you don't have to worry about it. So I'm not going to do very well. Anyway, fast forward, I entered the contest, and did I do terrific? Not so much. However, what was terrific was the level of comments that I had. We kind of scoffed at constructive criticism, but man, that makes so much difference when it's written like somebody like Martin, who can look at your model, see some potential in what nobody else could see, and offer some good constructive chat about how to become a better modeler, working on structures. At the time, I was also traveling extensively. I'm a consulting engineer, and that I was on the road more than I was home. But I discovered that even if I was going overseas, I could still arrange to take kits and paints. And this is, of course, I'm showing my age, when you could bring knives and sharp objects and files and tools on aircraft when you were traveling 7,000 miles and you were going to be gone for weeks, and you would have a trunk full of models and dare I say, flammable paints and everything that you could load on as industrial supplies. You'd put them in your work kit along with spare parts for your equipment, and off you'd go to South America or Australia, Tasmania. So you could take it on the road. My inspiration was Rod Stewart, the singer, because he would bring a whole hobby shop and hobby room with him when he went from gig to gig. I didn't quite have that much money to do, but I was able to take a lot of my modeling equipment with me to the 49 states I'd managed to travel to, and then almost 40 foreign countries during my. So did a lot of modeling, and mostly structures or cars, something that was small and portable. So when I came back when I spent more time in North Carolina, I moved here just so I wouldn't have to travel as much. And with my new job, I found myself doing 100,000 air miles a year plus all over again. So I had lots of time for modeling on the road. And I took one of those kits, finished it off, and I said, okay, I'll bring it to a convention. Well, I put it on the table, and as we'll see, not something that was going to light any fires in the great hall of fame of modeling. But each time I entered, I got some good constructive comments, be they for cars, locomotives, structures mostly. And I would follow those notes on the next model I built, and the next model, the next model. In the meantime, I was doing some work on a layout. I got started. My first layout was over 6 years ago. It was 3 feet by 5 feet. It was under my bed on casters, and I'd roll it out and put it on top of the bed, and that was my layout. So nothing could be over 4 inches tall, otherwise the bedspread would scrape off your structure. So you had to be very careful about how you built your layout. And I grew up right in the middle of the city, so my only train watching was from up the roof of the apartment building, which had a little consternation there. Said, you were up there where? Okay, but I had to look at the trains. But I could see the Boston and Maine over one corner. I could see the New Haven in another corner. So it was very natural that there was a short line that would connect and interchange between those two railroads, and an entrepreneur can make a few dollars shuffling cars between the two railroads. So hence the line of the Berkshire Short Line went through town, through the back of my apartment, and connected the two railroads. Hence the Berkshire Short Line, which became the line of BS, which we know will take you anywhere you want to go. So started with that, then a few engineering years with college, and then back on the road. But my NMRA contest who should be the contest chair, but one Martin, I can't pronounce his last name, but he had written some very nice comments. I mean, he doesn't say this was Berkshire short line. He didn't say it was like that. He said it was a model with potential, and he told me how to do it. And we'll actually see that that model later on. And then over the years, I got more and more involved with still my favorite structures. They're near and dear to my heart. What I've tried to do is model my hometown. I grew up in Western Massachusetts. So yes, I have my apartment building there on High Street. I have a number of other, this particular model is also living on High Street now. So over the years, I've tried to model my hometown as accurately as I reasonably can, because that's really where my modeling just began and where my roots still are. Like so many New England towns, it's become so run down you don't recognize anyway. So I have built models of those buildings to the point where, we'll see in a little bit, I have the local museum curator. One of my high school buddies dropped the dime on me and said, "Hey, Murph's building this model of a station. You got to get a look at it." So he sent me photos. We've looked at it together, and yeah, it's slated for going up into there. But the model you just saw there was number one that Martin saw for the first time in the early 2000s. Yeah, not long on detail, but I spent some time painting it and weathering it. The dry goods place was in Holyoke, the bank is on the left, and I worked at Becker's Menswear in high school. Got the next one there. Okay, time evolves. I take the comments to heart. One suggestion was it's okay to put lights in it. It's okay to make it very specific, to add interiors, to add pictures. Well, we used to get our groceries at the High Street Economy Market. I got my first suit at Bessie Mills, and I had a drink in Bernard's. I will not say how old I was. After all, it was Massachusetts. So all those little vignettes of memories, and I've also had relatives come and visit the layout. They're from New England, and they go, "Oh yeah, Murph, I remember." Is it exactly the same? Of course not, but it does capture the flavor of New England, and that's what I'm trying to do with my hometown. It's a little bit dusty, it's a little bit run down, but it's home, and you can reflect my feeling towards it. Also, you can begin to see in the background, my wife Nancy is a painter, and she has done backdrops for the layout from photographs, so that the background photos are reflected in the layout backdrop, and that adds a lot to the feel of Western New England in the fall, to get those things. And next, and then we take it to the extreme again, combining a prototype model from my hometown. This is the Boston and Maine station, originally built the Connecticut River Railroad. When I was a teenager, one of my buddies who was in the same Gilbert S scale club that I was in as teenagers said, "We got to build something of Holyoke." Well, he had one structure in mind. The library, for instance, he was dedicated, and I had the state. So over the years, that's always been a back burner. About 20 years ago, my friend says, "Hey, Murph, you coming up for the reunion?" I said, "I hope to." He says, "Did you ever build that station model we were talking about?" I never quite got around to drawing plans or, taking photos. He calls bluff. He draws up plans. He takes photographs. He's inside the building from the current owner, a plumbing shop. And he says, well, maybe not this one. Next reunion, you're going to have it finished, aren't you? Yeah, Dunk, sure. Yeah, no problem. So sometimes encouragement comes not only from contest chairs, it also comes from your old buddies who you said, yeah, I was going to do that. Well, they'll call your bluff. All right, so we fast forward, and between photographs and this particular building, I had to draw up full plans, got a copy of AutoCAD and went at it. This is entirely made of resin in order to get the granite and brownstone textures in there, which we'll see in a detail photo. I had to make castings of that kind of block and just made copy after copy after copy, and working from photographs and getting the textures right on the granite surfaces and on the buildings. And I had even to research the architect, because H.H. Richardson was famous for his anacanthus columns. And these are the odd, almost Egyptian shaped columns that he made for all of his stations for B&M, New Haven, Boston and Albany, and as well as the Boston Public Library and First Christian Church in Boston. So his Romanesque style is seen in a lot of places throughout New England. You can look at the inside. Here we got a detail of the columns, the brickwork, the stonework with brownstone, granite, and not shown. These labels are actually correct because there was a separate general waiting room, a telegraph room, a ladies' entrance, because ladies always entered separately than the general public. And over around the side is an equally labeled that says immigrants. So it wasn't just in the South where there was a bit of segregation in the 1890s. If you were Irish or Polish, Jack, or anybody else, you went in through the immigrants' door, and that was a separate waiting room that only gentlemen went through the general waiting room. So you got to reflect a little bit of history, which is why I think the museum is so hot to grab the model. But it depicts the 1950s, how it looked there. Fortunately, the station is still standing. And here's the interior, fully detailed. I was fortunate to get another blueprints from another station, and I was able to duplicate the marble. Those are 2x4 slabs of marble. Let's see, the architect owned a quarry. He owned woodlands. He owned a granite quarry, a brownstone quarry, and a marble quarry. So he was like the first vertically integrated contractor. He designed up the building, and then his own construction firm built everything. And he supplied everything down to the oak furniture that was filling up the place. Very clever individual. Another Bostonian, by the way. So but things that were unique. The ladies' room had nice fixtures and curtains and toilets in it. And over here in the immigrants, it's a one-holer with the old-fashioned overhead tanks that were up on the wall. For those of us of a certain age remember those. So the immigrants' rooms were a little more sparse. Wooden benches over here in the ladies. There's upholstered seats, but everything else just as it was. And I was even able to duplicate the colors from some very old photographs taken of restored buildings. And this is H.H. Richardson's Sunshine Yellow. Well, and he supplied the paint too. So by capturing this and the decking out front and the tracks out there, really able to capture the spirit of a model. And again, Martin, thank you so much for your comments. Some was, but it leads you to things accurate, take lots and lots of photographs, so that when you're comparing a prototype, especially, and I do like a lot of prototyping in my models, you can show the judges exactly what you have because you have a picture of it. And I don't think any of them broke, but by showing interior pictures of this station, I was able to get almost a perfect score on conformity, just by showing this is what the original structure was like. And finally, not just structures, another last photo here, again inspired by Martin. We can pop to the last one here. I think there's one more. And yes, no, or is that the last one?
There you go.
There we go. Not to be confined to structures. Same way with structures, in this case, caboose. The roof is removable and from copious photographs. And thank you, Jack, for being on the B&M Historical Society and can get me great photographs and some blueprints of B&M cabooses over the years. This is pretty close to that number caboose as I could reasonably get. This started out with brass etched side frames, and despite my limited soldering abilities, yes, you can still put together a brass model and be very satisfied with the outcome. As you can see in through the windows, yes, I did the detailing, certainly lights. These are LEDs stuffed into an old UTC or UPC marker light that had burnt out years ago. If you drill out the incandescent, you can put LEDs in there, put little magnifiers in there made from epoxy, paint them with a clear paint, and get the green, and red on the back, which was prototype for Boston and Maine. So that was one of my more fortunate ones. And also because I just gobbed down the detail, I was able to come home with the Lieberman Award that year. So it was that was extra satisfying. I'd only met Bob Lieberman early on, but I respected his modeling abilities too. And talk about a detail hound. Gosh, he was tough, rest his soul. But we're grateful for it.
Beautiful work, Jim.
Thank you.
Really is. Thank you so much for sharing it with us tonight. Well, Martin, let me get back to you now. We've met some of your friends and they've joined us. So, your techniques that you use in your modeling, you've been able to share those in various clinics and certainly articles around. Can you share some of that activity with us? I mean, do you like to do the clinics?
I like doing primarily hands-on clinics. I'm not a big fan of a dark room and a set of PowerPoint slides where half the room is getting an afternoon nap. And of course, that never happens. Never, really. No, I'd rather people have more fun, and I find it more satisfying when they're having fun, when we're doing something. And if you're sitting around making a mess at a table, it doesn't get any better. So I do hands-on clinics, and I'm going to go back. I think it was Jack who opened this can of anacondas. That flat car was one of the first. My flat car actually was my first merit award. It was my first contest entry as well. So I was off and running on cars on my very first NMRA meet that I attended. I entered this car, actually 2 or 3 cars, but I entered these cars having no idea what I was doing. And I got merit awards. I said, well, not quite sure what this means, but it was fun. And I decided, well, I'm going to write an article about this car, which ended up in the local, and then ended up in the national NMRA magazine, which at the time I think was called Scale Rails. And that evolved into a hands-on clinic, which I probably have done somewhere between 20 and 30 times, where we get 10 to 20 people into a room. I provide basically a semi-pseudo kit, and we build a flat car in 3 hours or less. And I confess, I have no expectations of people actually completing it in 3 hours, yet it has happened. There's been a couple. It has been, there was one gentleman I did this in Pittsburgh at a Mid-Central region convention, who did it completed the car in under an hour, came into the clinic an hour late, completed the car in under an hour, said, I'm going to turn it into a narrow gauge car, I'm going to shorten it, I'm going to do this, and sat down, bang, he was done, and said, hey, thanks, bye. And I was like, who was that guy? Well, he apparently got his MMR in record time. No one has ever done this, probably the least required amount of time possible. And I thought, but he had fun. I had fun. What's not to like? I do a resin casting, hands-on resin casting clinic. Make a mold one day, the next day, come back and use the mold. You can make a good mess doing this. And it can have some nice aroma with it as well. But people like to do it because you get to play with stuff with your hands. It sort of goes back to playing with Play-Doh as a kid. You get to do something with your hands. It's fun. But I will also, I will do these clinics, but I also write up the articles that go with them. I'll translate them into something in print because I think some people like to have both. So I've been doing that forever now, it seems, 20 years. Yeah, about 20 years. Uh-oh, now I'm in trouble. What in the world? So, yeah, I'm not quite sure what question this goes with, but yeah, so a completely fictitious building. The building is fictitious. The business is not. I actually have a rubber stamp that I inherited through my father, through his father, and maybe his grandfather. There actually was such a business, Brechbiel's Better Brooms. And I can recall my father and I, attending one of these, like the Kutztown Fair in Pennsylvania, where you find people running those broom making machines. And when he would see that, he would sort of shudder in horror and walk faster around it. And I never quite got an answer or explanation, but apparently there was a youthful meeting between that machine and him, and it stuck with me nonetheless, obviously. So I built a Brechbiel's Better Brooms, and this is in the town of my town of Laymasters, which is far earlier set than the current one. And oh gosh, this was one of the trolleys I built. That's actually in a column for my column in O Scale Trains magazine. This is a coal hopper motor. There were such things. We may or may not see a photo, a different one later, but this was just bashed out of a Weaver 2-bay hopper and some framework and scratch built ends and some real coal, drive underneath of it, and some paint, and it's lettered for the CG and W, also known as the, which was a real trolley line, the Chambersburg, Greencastle, Waynesboro, also known as the Come, Go, and Wait, which connected those 3 towns in Pennsylvania together and actually interchanged with the Hagerstown and Frederick in Shady Grove, Pennsylvania. I say interchange in a loose sense. They didn't actually share track in any way because they were different gauges. It was Pennsylvania broad gauge, and Hagerstown and Frederick was standard gauge. So there's a couple of inches difference. So you actually had to get off your trolley in Shady Grove, walk to the other corner of the station to get on the other line to go down to Frederick. Tank motor, completely scratch built car that I built, just thinking this would be fun to do. There was a great deal of pain involved in this as well as fun. Getting those doors in place, each of the cab has an interior. Those doors actually do slide back and forth. There's a little groove in the interior. The most painful part here was actually putting that tank in place. Those bands are actually what hold the tank. It's not glued in place. It's actually physically restrained by the bands that are soldered together and anchored into the base through, and I think you can see it. There's a little bit of an I-beam or a channel underneath. Of course, there's actually a bolt head on the other end. So they actually hold that tank down. And those platforms that hold the poles in place, those are all formed brass strap and flat stock. It's all soldered together and then glued up. A fun car to build. For some reason, I never bothered to re-letter it for the CG&W. I guess I could go dig it out and do that. And this car, oh, by the way, the CG&W had no freight cars and had no freight operation. It was all passenger. I've reinvented it as a freight line. I'm sure it would have been horrified by that prospect. There couldn't possibly be that much freight to justify. Certainly not to justify this engine motor, which is actually derived from a very early Piedmont and Northern motor, World War I, when they needed a bigger motor and couldn't afford it or weren't allowed to build it. So they took one of the small ones, took the motors out from underneath two of them, and built one of the first articulated trolley freight motors. This is the body. This is actually fairly representative of the prototype. I actually had a set of plans. Actually, I had 3 or 4 sets of plans, none of which matched. I found that quite amusing in some of the prototype modeling. So let's go get the prototype plans. Oh, we get 4 different publications had 4 different sets of plans, none of which matched. I thought, well, we'll go with the one that's probably the least amount of pain and confusion and have fun with it nonetheless. So this is all, that body's all scratch built. The ends actually, except for the very ends, those are cut down and reassembled Indianapolis Car Company styrene ends, which were fun to take a razor saw to and reassemble to get them to the right height. So there's actually a section cut out of the middle of those, and they're cemented back together with solvent glue. Yeah, let's keep moving. Doyle's Ice. This has actually got a lot of things going on in it. Doyle's Ice ended up in O-Scale Trains magazine. There's a full interior to that, which is kind of silly at this point in time because it's at the far back corner of that end of my layout. So you can't actually see what's in it without a flashlight. But at the time, it was fun to build. It's an article, 2 articles actually in O-Scale Trains magazine. There was an original article and then there was a Doyle's Ice Revisited. It's based on some kit that I saw a picture of and said, oh, that looks interesting. I'm not going to buy the kit. It's an HO, but I got pictures. That's enough. Let's build it. And the doors have real hinges on. They actually do work. Next to it, let's go back for just a second. Next to it over there is a corn crib. That is a board by board corn crib full of corn. This was actually a challenge on an online forum. And I said, let's build a corn crib. Everybody thought I was nuts. So we did it anyhow. There's actually, like I said, there's actually corn in it. That is rice, very small grain rice, dyed yellow. So that was a lot of fun to build. And the doors on that are also hinged. And of course, there's a passageway through the middle. No mice or rats have visited as yet. Let's move on. Clugston store. Okay, there was a Clugston store up near what is now my home, and it had a post office. Once upon a time, it looked nothing like this. I just stole the name. because I liked it. And I'm actually a distant relative somehow. Okay, if you're far enough into the rural area of Pennsylvania, everybody's your relative. You go back far enough in time. And my family in that area does go back to the 1730s. So I'm probably related to everybody at some point. This was a fun build. It's also two-part article in O-scale trains. This has a full, and it's lit on the inside. There's lighting on the, comes down from the ceiling of the first floor. There is a full interior on the second and first floor. It's fully accessible. All scratch built, a lot of it board by board, even the clapboards on this one. Is there more to seen or not? Yeah, so that's the in progress photos of the interior. So that there's part of the first floor, which it may be a shame that you can't really see it, but you have to get up close to it with a flashlight, or I have to plug the lights in. It's actually, yeah, it's over there on the shelf in my office. I don't know why, but it is. A lot of fun, you know, stone by stone foundation. You can see with over in the lower left photo, there's a white panel, and that's actually to glue that chimney onto it. And I'm betting there's a photo on the next one. It's the chimney. No, it's the interior of the second floor. Well, people lived upstairs from their business. So there's a back steps, stairway going up. There's a meeting room in the front for the town council to meet in. There's a dining room. There's a kitchen, a bedroom, little library, and a bathroom, all with the fixtures in it, and some rather extravagant art on the walls for a rural setting, but who knows? Old man Clogston had a lot of money. The back of where the loading dock is, loaded with all kinds of good stuff. There's actually somebody working or pretending to work while the other two aren't. Some nice washing machines. I found these castings. They're actually Langley, I think Langley castings, so it makes them actually British. They're probably 143rd, but gosh, how often do you find a Mangle washing machine? So I got a couple of them, and had to park them there, you know. And the lady of the house is upstairs, up on the entryway, up the steps, supervising. That's where they always are, supervising. One more photo, maybe. Yeah, there's the chimney. That is brick by brick. This is not recommended, a recommended practice, unless you're planning on self-commitment or heavy medication in your future. I found that out about a third of the way up building it. These are 1/35th scale bricks, which is close enough because bricks actually come in all different sizes. Not entirely perfectly square. It wanders about a little bit. The mortar in it is actual spackling grout that was pushed into the seams, and it's something I will never, ever do again. The top section of it actually lifts off with the roof. So this was it actually, there's alignment pins in there. Now, this is something never to be done again. Once done, you've learned your lesson. The lesson being, don't do this. It's dangerous.
Martin, you started this out by saying the first clinic that you did was for a flat car.
Yeah.
Why pick a flat car?
I had it, to be honest. And okay, it's the basis or the base for just about every freight car. If you can build a flat car, just stick everything else on top of it. You're done. You can build box cars, reefers. Okay, so you put steps at each end on a platform and push the ends in. Now it's a caboose. You can put a tank. An early tank car was just a tank laying on top of a flat car. We're going to see one of those later, I'm pretty sure. There's a lot of things. And also, if you build a couple of these things, you learn how to build stuff. You learn, and it's not that hard. It's not that painful. It's not that frightening. You can just do it. Yeah. So it's not a threatening level of, oh, let's build a whatever type of car that's got 4,000 parts. No, this has about 80 planks, 4 or 5, 6, 8 beams, and 2 end pieces. It's not that hard. And it is doable in 3 hours. At least I know I can build one. I built a couple of them 2 or 3 weeks ago in an afternoon.
Well, and like you say, it's the basis for everything else, because you put a box on top of it and you've got any kind of car you want to have, whether it's a caboose, a boxcar, reefer, whatever it is. It's just, it all has the same underbody.
Yeah, and I have had more than my share, or maybe it is my share, of people who have been through that clinic, who have come back and thanked me for teaching them how to do this.
Yep.
At least 2 have told me that that's how they got their AP cars done, because they did that clinic and they learned how to build cars and they got their MMRs. I thought, well, that's cool. That's I put a check mark. That's called, I'll take that as a success story. Stop there.
Absolutely. I've heard other people say that. So congratulations. I agree with you. Martin, how did you become the editor of O-Scale Trains?
Oh, God. Okay.
I knew you'd like that question.
Yeah. Okay. So this is convoluted. So I had published 4, 5, 6 articles in the magazine, not the least of which were 2 trolley articles. I'll start with that. Scratch built trolleys. There was a snow plow in that line car. I got a semi-frantic email from the then owner and founder of the magazine, Joe Giofinario, on a Monday while I was at work, saying, I need a column for the Traction Action column. My regular guy can't deliver this week for this issue. Can you do it? I thought to myself, how hard can it be? So, I'm goofing off on your taxpayer dollar at my office and thinking, well, let's see what happens. So I started typing. 3,000 words later, I paused and thought, how long is a column? What is a column anyhow? So I emailed him back. What are you looking for, Joe? I mean, give me an idea of the scope and size of what this is. They said, oh, I just need 1,000 words. I'm like, oops, I'm a little over. Okay, I went back to it and said, well, there's a natural break point sort of right here in the middle. Fine, break that. Don't throw anything away, but break it there. Take the front half, edit it down. I'm around 1,000 words. Send it to him. He said, oh, this is great. That'll work. Thank you. Big sigh of relief. And then I thought, where's the other half of that? Save that. I got a sneaking suspicion. Something smells. Set it aside. A week before the next, month, 6 weeks later, can you do that again? Well, I don't know, Joe. Let me give it some thought. This is the Scotty on Star Trek maneuver. Oh, I don't know. It could take 3 or 4 days. 3 hours later, it's done. Oh, you're a miracle worker. So I sent him. I took the other half, edited it down to about 1,000 words. It was tough, Joe, but I got it. Here you go. And that was the mistake. Same day comes back. Do you want the job? Oh, God, now I'm in trouble. Okay, what do you want me to write about? I don't care, as long as it's about trolleys. That narrowed it down a little bit. But what can I write about trolleys? Do you care? I mean, can I write about construction articles? Can I serialize things? Can I do this? I don't care. The answer, big letters in the email. I don't care as long as it's about trolleys. Okay, I can do that. And that was 2009. The last column I wrote for the Traction Action in the magazine was in the current issue that's on the newsstand right now. So I've been doing it for 14 years. It's a lot of columns. So about 10 years ago, Joe died. About June 10 years ago. He had lung cancer, non-small cell lung cancer, and he died. I'd seen it. I'd talked with him. I'd been at his house in May, coming back from the East Penn trolley meet, in fact, where I was representing the magazine on his behalf, and he died. I was on the porch up in Pennsylvania with Brian Scase, then editor, and we got the news, got the phone call, and we thought, well, that's done. We're both out of a job. So what about that? That's irrelevant. And we were both very saddened by the loss of Joe's good man, good friend. We thought highly of, and we were like, well, what's next? And I went home, told my wife the news, and thought, well, I don't know what we're doing now. We're probably done. And then we started getting some emails from Brian and Janie, and well, maybe we're not. Maybe we'll rebuild it. Maybe we'll revive it, resuscitate it. We skipped an issue, which I think is technically not legal on scheduled publications, but we skipped an issue and went back into business for another 5 years. And I was the associate editor and the Traction Action columnist, and I was representing the magazine at train shows. So I was traveling out to Chicago and Indianapolis with all the displays and accoutrements and selling subscriptions and back issues and what have you, all that fun stuff. Having generally a pretty good time. There were some less than good times, but there were generally good times. The driving through the snowstorm in Indiana in March, finding out later that there was hundreds of accidents left in my wake and a massive chain reaction with fires and everything, which I later found out, I didn't know about that till a day later when someone said, hey, did you know about that? Oh, I was like, what? Okay, that must have all been behind me. I didn't see any of that. Could barely see the road, but I got to Chicago. And then almost 6 years ago, Janie decided, I can't do this anymore. The finances aren't working. I can't afford to keep the magazine alive. We're pulling the plug. Done. And okay, this is familiar territory. We thought we're out of a job again. Okay, well, it happens. 3 weeks later, we get a notice that White River Productions has bought O-Scale Trains magazine. I thought, okay, and I'm told by email, we're back in business. We got to get the next issue out in 2 weeks. Okay. Because it's going to be on schedule. We're not skipping an issue. Okay. Quick, write a column. Okay. We did 2, 3, 3.5 issues in that format. Our editor bailed out for various and sundry reasons I'm not going to go into. And prematurely, it got dumped in my lap. You want the job? Gosh, I heard this before. Okay. We'll pay you. I was like, well, okay, I'm not too concerned about pay as much as I am about my time and commitments and the fact that I don't have very much content for the next couple of issues. So it's going to be more gray hair and maybe a little incipient receding hairline, but okay, I'll do it. So I've been doing it since, well, almost 6, a little over 6 years. About 30 issues, about 33 issues now. Unfortunately, the last issue is January and February of next year, and Kurt's final column will be in that issue. So everything that was planned for all the issues through 2024 got rejumbled, resorted on the fly 8 weeks ago. I had plans to have serialized storylines carrying into 2024. I had to pull those all back into 2023, push things around, reorganize. It's sort of like juggling squirrels and chainsaws at the same time, some in each hand. And we're going to be an annual publication in 2024. And my deadline for press, I just got it on Wednesday, is April 1st. What finer date could I possibly have for the first annual O-Scale Trains annual, but April 1st? So, it's just it's been a 20 years of fun, comedy, tragedy, all the Shakespearean plays rolled into one. Other than Othello and King Lear, they weren't in it. No offspring were damaged. Although there were times when my children apparently thought I was in Rhode Island giving a lecture, while in fact I was downstairs working. That's another story, though. So, let's take up your time.
There's an awful lot of O-Scalers out there, Martin, that really thank you so much for help publishing that magazine for all these years.
Well, we've kept it alive, resuscitated it twice. Now we're having a bypass surgery into an annual of some sort. I don't know what that's going to look like. So, some other people at White River have some ideas that they are going to share with me. I may or may not hate them. I'm making it up as I go. Seat of the pants. Everything. I'm going to try to take all the stuff that was supposed to get published in 2024 in 3.5 issues and cram it into one annual, and maybe add a little bit more. I got 100 pages to play with, plus or minus a little bit. So it's going to be, what do they call that? Fun times. We'll see.
Well, I know that everybody wishes you best of luck with it, and we're all looking forward to seeing the first issue. So let's go and look at some more of your modeling here, and have you tell us a little bit about it.
Ooh, goody. Find out. Oh, well, pickles. So there were I had the plans for pickle cars. These actually came in several different gallon capacity sizes. Heinz never really had one that looked like this with this lettering, but they did have them, as did a whole host of others. And I actually used this is one of those rare occasions where I actually did use some of the plans for these cars. They were available from a NMRA special interest group that had gone out of function, died off, but they had a newsletter called Pickles in Miniature. And the NMRA, there's the other one. NMRA library had the back issues. And for what I thought at the time was a pittance, and it was a pittance, it was like under $10. They sent me photocopies of everything they had, every issue they had in the library. I got a copy of. And in one of them were all the plans for the pickle cars, the gallon sizes, and the vinegar tank car. So, wow, I'm all set. I can build pickle cars all the time. They're easy. They're fun. They really are fun. And there's lots of fun stuff in these. I don't remember.
It's a good looking model.
I don't know if these are decals or dry transfers, but I think they're decals.
Yeah. Next.
Well, we've got to have the other type of pickle car. This is actually a resin kit car. I'm drawing a blank on who it is. I'll remember about 3 a.m. But it's resin. It's generally it's a beautiful car. There's very little you have to do to complete it, other than to add all the metal parts and the castings that you come up with, and the underbody, and it came with these beautiful decals. They're actually multi-layered decals. They're not multicolored decals. You actually assemble layers, which is kind of fun. They're not dry transfers. I know I took this car, the raw body casting into my office, where there's a machine shop in the basement, three basements down. I took this to the machinist because the center sill on the prototype is actually hollow. Being resin casting, it was solid. So I actually took it down to him and had him asked him, can you mill this out for me? And he knowing me, he knew me for many years and knew that I would ask him to do things that were, for him, probably bizarre. But that was accepted in this building. The bizarre behavior was the norm. And he flipped it over and said, yeah, sure, I can do that. Come back, I'll have it to you later. And with much trepidation, I left the room, and I'll have it to you, but before you go home. Well, I went to lunch, came back, and it was on my desk, under an hour. So, everything is it's going to take to the end of the day. It usually took an hour, and it showed up on your desk, finished, beautifully done. And now I could install the brake rigging and gear properly in this car.
Beautiful car. Beautiful car. Next.
Beautiful. Oh, well, we talked about Doyle's Ice. I guess we had a copy of it. This is one of my little trolleys. This was the original one. This was the scratch built one.
Mhm.
The ends are resin, but the rest is scratch built. The basic recreation of the Pitman work trolley.
Yeah.
Rather than actually buy a Pitman work trolley, I thought, I could just build this. It's be more fun. The roof, the roof is also resin on this, on the original one. So yeah, and underneath of it is the old Bowser trolley drive, which is geared incredibly fast, but if you just keep the controller at a low speed, it zips around the layout just nice as can be. And I've probably built 6 or 7 different variations of this, including a reefer and other, adding doors, windows to the sides, and doing them all in resin.
Neat car.
Yep, and here's one. Here's a completely different variation of it. The snow sweeper flanger car. I know this got a merit award some years. I don't know, who knows what year it was, but a load of fun to make. Bottle brush out front. There's actually still the same drive, basically the same car. We just added a platform to it. It's pretty much, I'm pretty sure it's styrene actually, or I don't remember. It's either styrene or brass, but a journal that I took out of something else and made a copy of, made 4 of them, and those were resin castings for the bottle brushes to rest in. So it's styrene and brass additions, and the flanger sides, they're actually on a hinge and pivot. And those chains actually do work. They hold it in place.
Next.
Oh yeah, there's the reefer car. Hey, guess what? It's delivering ice to Doyle's Ice, who has since gone out of business delivering ice. I have no idea where he delivers ice to now, but I'd seen trolley ice cars. I thought, well, that sounds like fun. Okay, I got reefer castings. How hard can that be? Let's add a window and a door and all the other gadgetry and bits and pieces and detail parts. Let's build one of these. Oh yeah, so let me pause here for just a second. I actually sold kits to build the basic one, all in resin. I sold two sides, 2 ends, and a roof for $20. I probably sold 50 of them, 40 of them, I guess, and said, this is trivially easy, and it's a great way to get as an entry point into trolley traction modeling. I said, the only trick to this is build it upside down on a piece of glass. So you align the ends and the sides flat, then you just drop the roof on it after you sand it with a block of sandpaper. You go get a Bowser mechanism, you snip off the ends, 2 screws, you've got a trolley. It's that easy. Okay, you add a pole. I think I built one of these with a pantograph on it once. The detail parts are a small investment. The drive you can get for 50, at the time you could get for $40 to $60. Under $100, you had a trolley, 2-rail trolley. I thought that was, and people, I sold a lot of these at the East Penn meet and some other places, and people actually came back to me and said, can I get 4 more of those? Everybody at the club wants one. Like, Sure, give me a day. I'll get the castings out and put it together for you. And I thought this was a great entry point. So low cost investment. I don't think you can get the drives now, except maybe on eBay, but they're still not that expensive given what you're getting out of it. I thought this was just like, I was just trying to push people over the cliff a little bit into trolley modeling. It would be, this is not $500 of brass and another $150 for a drive plus $200 for detail parts to get a trolley. This is like $75 and you're done. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. This was just a sprinkler car I built. Keep weeds down. You got a tank on the end. That was a casting, I think, a resin casting, but all the rest of this, there's a hit and miss engine there with a pump attached to it, hooked up to the tank, feed the sprinklers, barrels with God knows what noxious substances are in there. Those sprinkler arms are two pivot. There's a full underbody. This is sort of based roughly on the old All Nation traction flat car kit, which I reinvented as a resin casting and actually sold kits of those. I sold a limited number of those, I think 25 of those kits. Lots of other parts here. I like putting a dog on these things. You know, you got to have a dog. The dog's entirely too clean, but you got to still have a dog. I had these side frames and I didn't know what to do with them. That's what caused all three of these cars. They are in one of my columns. That was the total impetus for building this, the side frames. What am I going to do with these things? And I thought, oh, we're going to make a little four-wheel trio of maintenance away cars. We got a tank on the end. We got a container at the other end, and I work flat with all the hard-working employees of the CG&W, having a sit down on the flat in the middle. As I recall, yeah, there's even a measuring stick for the water tank there, that red and black stick on the side. There's a drain on the end, a ladder, lots of tools, a broom for tidying up. As I recall, I actually named these cars Huey, Dewey, and Gort. There's a joke in there somewhere for some people who will get that. I don't know who they are, but I do remember somebody coming up to me just laughing and pointing at me about that at one of those train shows. Another so this is a traction maintenance away car. I had the casting for the crane. There's a workbench and tools and bins and what have you at the other end. Obviously a lot of flies in a room, shooing them away with the hat there. This is where I really can get into trouble and indulge I can unhinge and unleash my creativity, genes or whatever. We got traction and we got maintenance away, right at the intersection of where I can get into all sorts of, let's go down a giant rabbit hole. So this is not maintenance away. This is one of my an early series of maintenance away cars I built. This is a scratch built crane.
That's beautiful. That is gorgeous.
There's a dog on this one too. I know there's a dog on the other side. There's a tender car that goes with it. There's a full, there's a boiler back there and all kinds of stuff and tools and cables, and the crane's got the hinge actually is hinged. It does go up and down if you gingerly move it. Won't go far because eventually they run out of cables. But this was like back in 2008, 5, somewhere in there. I brought like 8 of my maintenance away cars to the MER convention, and not having any idea what was going to happen. And I didn't stay. I only came out, dropped my cars off states. I had family was in town. I couldn't be there. My in-laws were, and I couldn't do stuff. And I came back to the convention Sunday morning. They had Sunday morning awards, not for Saturday night. And I stuck my head in the door, and Clint Hyde, whose name was mentioned earlier, spotted me and said, "Don't you," and he yelled at me with a microphone. I was really embarrassed. Not leave the room. You get up here now. I'm like, what did I do? I mean, what? Come on, it's Sunday morning. I just came in here to pick up my models and go home. I didn't do anything yet. It turned out I won like 7 plaques that day. I got all kinds of awards for every car won a merit award. There was some maintenance away award. There was some other. I mean, it was like, it was like Hyde was like, you nearly ruined the awards ceremony by not showing up. Anywho, so that got me cars, AP cars. It was my first AP category. I basically did it in one convention. I had a passenger car at home sitting there, so it was done. This was my take on a kit car that I saw, and I thought, I don't need a kit. I got a picture. Let's build it. And oh yeah, debris and scrap metal and wood and stuff. Gosh, I got boxes of that underneath my layout, underneath my workbench. This is a good excuse to get rid of it. Put it in a car and make it go away. The most fun thing here was building that little crane out of code 125 rail. That's all soldered together and pivots in a socket on the end. Yeah, there, that's a better photo. And some nice kit trucks from Keystone Locomotive Works. I had some of those and I thought, those look really neat. Not the normal standard arch bars. Saw sharpeners shack on a car. So again, that's the next one. We can go forward. Yeah, the saw sharpener shack car. That goes hand in hand with the other car. Same trucks. I was building them together. I had the saws. I saw a picture of the kit car and I thought, okay, I got a picture. I got an idea. I know what I'm building. Next, let's go build. There's an interior. There's all kinds of stuff in this car. So yeah, there's lots of stuff on the outside. Yep, there's a drill press. I don't know what you need a drill press for sharpening saws, but you want to hand crank a drill press? I got a full 1-to-1 size of that drill press hanging on the wall in my workshop. So never use it, but it looks interesting. Looks like pain. And we're back to Brechbiel's Better Brooms again.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we've been here and done that. And this is actually a kit building. I forgot who makes it, and I stayed pretty close to it, except I reinvented it. It's, the butler's out back getting a delivery of ice from Doyle's, probably, in fact. This is the Gracell Ferguson Finishing School and Home for Wayward Girls. There are so many jokes involved in that I don't even want to go any further with it. If you're ever around my layout and you get to look at this, you'll see why. There are questionable views. Let's put it that way. We're after, well, it's not quite 9 o'clock. We're still in the family hour. So it's entertaining. That green building across the way is Agate's funeral home. That was a resin kit, which was a horror to assemble. Made it work anyhow. There actually is an Agate's funeral home. It's used to be in Dry Run, Pennsylvania. It's it's since relocated to outside of Spring Run in a brand new building. It looked absolutely nothing like that building, but I do take names from places and people who really exist. So, oh, there you are. There's Gracell Ferguson herself, being confronted by one of the honchos of the town of Leymasters, who's obviously she's been traveling and is back from checking out the undercontinent, bringing back more talent for the house, perhaps, in the trunk. Something more recent. Now there was a kit available for this car in a resin kit, and I thought, I saw it. It was only in G scale at the time, and I thought, I want one. Why can't I have one? I want one in O scale. Why can't I have one? Well, I can. I built one. I said, well, how hard can it be? Well, it really wasn't that hard to do, it turned out. I mean, it's all kinds of strip wood and pieces, but yeah, it's got that same, oddly enough, that same flat cars underneath of it. But the rest of it, you can see this. You can see the saw marks in that wood on the bench at the end. That's some really neat wood I got from Kapler Lumber. It's red cedar, and it actually shows the cutting marks in it. Most of it is marginally straight, which is also kind of fun to use because you couldn't put those bends in it if you wanted to. So I have 2 bundles of this stuff, and I'm starting to use it in various cars when I can. It comes pre-aged, pre-stressed, pre-whatever. Detail parts from Berkshire Valley and other places, a coil of cable. Those doors have working hinges. A roof is tar paper from, I think, Paper Creek or Clever Brothers. I can't remember who. I think it was the last I had. It's actually peel and stick. It's actually really neat looking stuff, even up close. It looks really good. I'm surprised how good it looks. That is a workbench out of a different car, and one that was finished this year. Various tools from other places and locales. You can't really see it in the back half, but there's all kinds of pliers and other hammers and tongs and stuff hanging on nails and wrenches at this end. And that lantern there is put there for a very specific purpose. That hole actually coincides with a window on a car. And I'm hoping the car is next. No, it's not. That's interesting. Okay, well, maybe we'll see it later. But that was just an example of interior detailing. A fire car, hose of solder. That's actually just solder coiled up on a coil. It's all scratch built over wood and stuff. The bands are not quite functional, but they're frequently functional when I do this. Basically a scratch built car derived from probably a kit that I saw that I said, I want one of those, but I'll make mine differently. The truss rods actually are all connected and go through the ends. They're sort of functional. The dome is fabricated from brass. It's all soldered together and little pieces and stuff, all testing my patience with my little torch and not burning my fingers.
Good looking.
This, okay, I said a picture of a tank car on a flat car.
Yeah.
There it is. A 4-dome tank car. Not 1, not 2, not 3, not 6, 4. I saw the decals for this and I thought, I got to have this car. The decals were the deciding factor here. The driving impetus for my building cars can be almost anything. I got decals, let's build a car. I got dry transfers, I'm building that car. I got a really, really bad photograph out of a stereo vision car. Card. The pictures, I have this, it's been waiting for a while. A 3-truck side, A-frame side door gondola that the Erie Railroad had. 3-truck. Okay. That's all it takes. I look at the car and say, I want one. I want to build that. It's going to be fun. So this This has an interesting story. This is actually on resin. This is not on one of my cars. That's a resin car base. The tank comes from your electrical aisle at the Home Depot. That's a piece of conduit plumbing. The ends are actually brass ends that were reshaped and secured with JB Weld and then filed, sanded to match. The domes are from Scale City Designs. The rest is all my scratch building and stuff. The bands do function to hold that tank there. There's nothing else holding that tank. Initially, that was true. I took this outside and painted it all black. Okay, I paint outside. It's 90 degrees out. I'm over blacktop in a box, cardboard box, it's resting on a trash can. It's 90 degrees in the air. In that box, it's about 120, maybe 130 with that blacktop. You remember I said resin. Okay, I brought the car back in the house. Painted, I thought, hey, this is great, it's done. Black. All I gotta do is add the red paint, go back out, gloss it, we can put the decals on, coat it again, we're done. Took it down to my shop, set it aside, thinking, well, I need to take a photo of it right now because I got the black paint on. And then I picked up the car, I said, what the heck's wrong with this thing? And suddenly I realized the resin had warped. So we've gone from 120 degrees, probably, because picking this up, I could burn my fingers out there. At least 120 degrees, more, probably more. Taking it downstairs into my workshop where it's 75, at most 75 degrees. It may be closer to 70. It's very cool. I have a fully underground basement at that end. I've had a 60, 70 degree temperature differential drop in under 10 minutes. Warp. Okay, great. Now what? I don't want to rebuild this car. I'm not even sure I know how to rebuild this car at this point. Take it back outside the next day, got another 195 degree day. I leave it out in the sun, rotate it around every 20 minutes, turn it, push, twist. It's sort of coming back. I get to a point and it's like, well, I got 60, 70% of it recovered, re-straightened out. Not going to happen. I can't straighten it anymore. Okay. Hate to do it, but went downstairs, drilled a hole through the bottom, in through, angled up next to the car bolster, diagonally into the tank slightly to miss the end at both ends, ran a, I don't know, about a number 8 sheet metal screw, panhead sheet metal screw, up through the base of the car, pulling the ends up to meet where they should be with the tank. It's about 95% straight now. It's a little droop at each end. If you really strain your eyes, you can see it. I can because I know where it is, but it's back to straight enough. So the lesson learned here is, okay, so you can put stuff outside and paint. Be careful about that. Depending on what it's made out of, temperature shock, bringing it inside can do interesting things to your models. Styrene might melt out there for all I know, but I've brought in metal cars and basically almost burnt my fingers, blistered my fingers because they were so hot. I'm thinking, wow, I've baked the paint on really good this time. And I think, what temperature does solder melt?
Yeah.
I wonder. It hasn't happened yet, but it does bake the paint on really nicely. And Better yet, for marital relationships, keeping the smell of rattle can paint outside the house maintains harmony within the household. It's
Absolutely.
good for your health. It's good for your health and good for your marriage.
Absolutely. Well, listen, guys, I don't know whether you realize it. We've been here about 2 hours now. So I'm going to jump around a little bit on the questions instead of following the script 100%. So, Martin, let me ask you this. Who are the people who most influenced your modeling and helped you learn how to build?
Okay. One guy who I really looked back and looked up to and learned a lot from, Noel Horan, who some people who remember his name, MMR, somewhere in the 300 numbers. I don't remember which. He worked part-time at the hobby shop back when we had a hobby shop. One exit down the DC Beltway from me. So I would leave work, go by my house, go to the hobby shop, spend time there, talk to Noel, see what he was building, because he would build while he was at the shop, and learn stuff. And from him, I learned a very important key thing. Learn where good enough is and stop. It happens. You can just say, no, that's good enough. I'm going to stop here. Because odds are, if you don't, you'll probably make it worse. It reaches a point where things are, this is one of his models. I was lucky enough to score this off of eBay because somebody bought the storage container where his stuff was and put it all on eBay. I recognized it and said, I'm buying this. I don't know what it's going to cost, but I'm buying it anyhow. And I had a place for it on my layout, right trackside, right at the one end where you can walk right up to it. And I wanted that model. That's my main. He was a narrow gauge modeler primarily, but from him I learned a lot of tricks. And like I said, when to stop and what's good enough. It's like that looks good. We'll stop here.
Well, let me follow up with that, because this question I ask everybody, and it's amazing how many different answers I get.
Oh.
When you're building a model, how do you know when it's finished? It's time to say, that's it, I'm done.
Oh gosh. Well, usually when it satisfies my level of, I say, oh, I can't add any more. There's no more detail here. It's telling the story I wanted to tell. It's got all the parts where they belong. It says, this scene has everything in it that would be there if I were there. So, now this is the opposite of that. This was an exercise in aggravation. And I said, I'm stopping here. This was the Sacramento Northern coach I built for the New Track show. It's a LaBelle kit. This was a comedy of challenges. Got to this point and said, I don't want to work on this anymore. So there's another data point or criterion for stopping. When you say, I don't want to work on this anymore, you might want to stop right there and say, okay, put it aside. Maybe you come back to it 2, 5, 10 years later, but maybe never. And maybe you just sell it and say, I've had enough. I've had enough of this model. I need to move on. Enough of my soul was spent in its construction. I want part of my soul back. Let's keep moving.
Martin, do you look at your models as a piece of art?
Art. Okay, let's work with a definition of art. And my favorite definition of art comes from Andy Warhol, who said, art is what you can get away with. So embracing that in every possible spirit, there's always art. Art is completely subjective. I mean, you build a scene like this. I mean, I got a milk station. I used to sell milk station kits too. Now I remember. That was a clinic too. But you build a scene like this, nice, dusty, dirty. We got cucumbers being delivered. We got Doyle's ice. We got the backside of the pickle plant. I could turn this into a sepia tone postcard, and it begins to look like something that could actually be real. And you say, yeah, art, yeah, possible, sure. I think Andy would hate it, but
I
he had
think I would have to say, I believe it's a piece of art. New modeler coming in to build his first model.
oh
What advice would you give him?
don't worry about it too much. Don't be fearful. Everybody fails. Some at some point bad things happen. Maybe they won't. Don't worry about it. Life will go on, and you can fix 99% of whatever you did wrong anyhow. So don't worry about it. People get into a kit and they say, "Oh, I've ruined it." So, no, you haven't. Just cut it apart and replace that piece. And as for, I can't get it to work the way they said to make it work. So what? Make it work the way you want it to make it work. Don't worry about it. Don't fear failure. Don't fear to invent things. Don't fear to make changes. Just because it's written down in the instructions doesn't mean you have to actually follow them. I have frequently said that instructions make a good thing to put in the budgie cage, a budgie being a parakeet. I don't see instructions as something you need necessarily. I also used to joke, it's O-scale. The first thing you do with instructions is throw them away and build it the right way. That works 9 times out of 10. Every now and then I've run into 1 or 2 kits where the instructions were actually incredibly useful. But there are only so many ways things go together. Okay, you may find all the wrong ones first, but you'll learn something. It's about learning as part of this. So you'll learn how to do things. And, the instructions could be wrong too. You could be right and the instructions could be wrong. And I'll tell you, we all have run across instructions that were misleading, erroneous. The parts were mislabeled, what have you. So, don't worry about it. Relax, have fun with it. It's supposed to be fun. Last time I checked, we've lost, many people have lost sight of the fact that their fun is part of model railroading. They get way too serious. You need to relax a little.
Martin, you're an MMR. Every MMR that I've ever met has some stories about their trip to get the MMR. Some of them are funny, some of them are not. What's your favorite story about your MMR?
Well, Kurt's already told you one of them. Dispatcher, because I read the requirements and said, I don't even know what that means. And he came over and translated that into English that I appreciated. They need to rewrite that someday. But okay, so I never really encountered anything really too strange until there was one thing I got into that I thought, the motive power. I didn't read the requirements for the one car or one locomotive or whatever it is has very, very, very specific requirements on the scratch building section. Locomotives, you have to build, the side rods and stuff. Diesels, you got to do the side frames and stuff. Then there's other requirements. And trolleys, you got to make the pole or the pantograph and the side frames. And which I didn't read. All three of my motive power were trolleys. I didn't read that. I thought I had it done. Oh boy. I was enlightened nicely, politely, gently. Charlie Fleischman said, you know, you need to fix that. You fix that, it's okay. Okay, back into the shop. Make side frames. Not hard to do. You know, you make one master and you cast the other, and then you cast 4 of them. Now you have 4 identical resin ones that you made from your own master. That's scratch building, it counts. Okay, making a pole, not hard. There's lots of instructions on a pole. Okay, you might go blind or insane putting the little tiny springs on the pole to hold it in place. But other than that, okay, so you practice with a Chemtron kit or a precision scale kit, which is about a micron away from scratch building. And then you copy it and make one. No big deal. And a couple of weeks later, I said, hey, Charlie, done. Here's the pictures of the stuff. Are we good? Yeah, no problem. Great. Just send me a copy of, you sent me copies of the photos. We're good. Up it went, back it came, done. Big sigh of relief. I thought, oh, that wasn't so painful. It wasn't so horrific either. I mean, all this stuff hasn't been that terribly painful. I mean, Kurt's point about, don't read too much into it. I'll counter that also with, don't forget to read it though. You might miss something. Not hard.
I think Kurt's advice is that it's so true. You hear people talk about, oh, I couldn't do that. I can't do this. This is too difficult for me. And you find out they've never read them. They have no idea, or they read them and what they think they have to do and what they read is 2 different things. So I agree 100% with what Kurt said early on about don't read anything into what you're reading.
Well, and the other half of that is Jack and Jim both have been judges, as have Kurt. If you go and work with people who have done judging and you do it a few times at the regional level, you actually learn how to direct your models to get over that 87.5 points. And you also, see what other modelers did, and you say, oh, this, and you look at what they did, and you realize this really isn't that hard. You can get there. You gain an appreciation for what's achievable. Oh gosh, it's the achievement program. I got to find another word. Where's my thesaurus? Whatever. It's not insurmountable. This is not impossible. People will seem to think, oh, this will never happen. I can't do it. It's like, well, you're right if you never try. But you might find if you try a few times, yeah, you may fail the first time or 3, but you'll get better each time. And I would say that's really an important part of this. It's supposed to be educational and help you be a better modeler. You don't have to be getting 124 out of 125 points on your models, but somewhere in there, you'll get better. 87.5 points is average out. It's 70% of 125. You don't have to get perfect. Nobody, you're competing against yourself anyhow, so it doesn't really matter.
Right. Martin, we're almost to the end of our time here. What are your future plans for this hobby? Where do you go from here?
Well, I'm still going to be working for White River, apparently, working the annual. So I guess I'm going to be doing the literature thing and writing articles. I'm still building multiple things. Yeah, okay. That's embarrassing. I took the photos, so I have no excuse. But I'm still associated with the regional publication, the local, and I just sent our editor 2 articles today, one of which I wrote this morning. I write for our division, so I'm not, the writing articles isn't stopping. Building stuff? Okay, but now let's go to those embarrassing photos. Yeah, come on, there we are. Okay, this is two shelves of stuff, projects. This is far from everything. Fair warning on that. I'm not going to show you everything. I can't even get to everything. And it's far less than it used to be, at the urging of my better half. The photo to the left is a rack that I actually built from miscellaneous scraps and parts and a display that was thrown out by Whole Foods, courtesy of my son. But there are every box there is a project of some sort waiting its turn. That third shelf from the bottom is an entire town, which goes on one of those lift outs on my layout. The photo to the right, those are all trolley and traction projects. The entire, everything there. There are a pair, Jim, there are a pair of Kidder Illinois Terminal Class C locomotives in there.
Good grief.
One of which is one is 90% assembled, the other one is 100% disassembled. It just needs to be put together. There was a box with the Chemtron cast brass parts for a Class B or C. I was smart enough to sell those and get before I fell into too much temptation. So yeah, there are all kinds of fun and more fun trolleys there. There's a couple of IMP steeple cabs. There are all kinds of projects. You see there's a Walthers box. I don't even remember which car that is, but it was an very unusual one I'd never seen before. So I agreed to be tempted. Mephistopheles himself came and tapped me on the shoulder and said, "You really want this?" Okay. He twisted my arm enough. I bought it. So I have 12 feet of workbench. 3/4 is empty right now. Very odd, very strange. I also build on top of, for all the carpenters, this is terrible that I'm doing it, but I'm using, and I find it to be the most pleasant place to work now, my radial arm saw workbench is actually now a model building bench. The height is just right. So now I'm considering trying to figure out how to raise my carpentry bench 10 inches or a foot. I'm not sure it's doable or plausible, but, or even that I should really succumb to that temptation. But I usually have 4 to 6 projects running simultaneously. So I'm always building more. When I'm done with it, I look at it and say, that's good, I'm done. Now, what's the next model? What's the next project? Who's next? Next in line, step forward, please, and be built.
Well, I personally hope you never stop building, because I love to see you build. I love watching you build things, and you build some beautiful models, Martin. So congratulations. I mean, you're one of the premier builders in our hobby, as far as I'm concerned. Well, friends, I appreciate so much you joining us this evening. And we're coming to a close here for tonight. So I'd like to offer each one of you an opportunity for any final words you might want to say to Martin or whatever. So Kurt, how about you? You got any final words?
Well, I do want to thank Martin. I try and thank him when we spend time together and work. That he's been a big help. Both I had some of those constructive comments after I tried to rush through my structure AP. Tried to get that done before I became the region vice president, and that fell flatly on its face. And I waited 2 years before I went back to that well, but I got that done before I took over as president. And Martin was part of that final evaluation team. And that was the help I had to. I didn't have cars to do, I had structures. And then once they were done, the paperwork was finished.
Yep.
And I thank Martin for that.
I just add that I've enjoyed and continue to enjoy working with Martin on proofreading the local and just keeping in touch regarding various administrative matters with MER. I'm a bit of a nitpicker, and Martin is way over my head in terms of nitpicking and being fastidious and getting things right. And so I appreciate all that. And he has a great institutional memory within the region. And it's very important for those of us who have been there before to share that. And I appreciate that Martin is staying involved with the MER and helping out.
Well, Jack, thank you so very much.
Mhm.
Jim, how about you? You're muted. Jim, I
Pardon
think
my
you're.
technology there. In
There
any
you go.
event, well, thank goodness that I have had the opportunity to learn from Martin over the years. I look forward to seeing him at annual conventions, as so do my friends there. We get organized. We've got a convention coming up, as Jack mentioned, and we're hoping to see him there. But just to provide all the help he has and advice mostly. He has been the voice of calm when it comes to your modeling activities. So don't stress it. And I thank you for that, Martin. You're the epitome of don't stress it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Really appreciate you being here tonight. So Martin, I'll give you the last word, sir.
Wow, calm.
Zen modeling.
Yeah, yeah. You've never seen me with a chainsaw, have you? I got rid of the hockey mask, but anywho, so yeah, I try to help people and get things done. You know, that fastidiousness. I like that word. Yeah, I kind of let my OCD get loose occasionally on editing, but having been in the publish and perish universe 2/3 of my life, more, that's kind of ingrained in me. I can't let it go. So those I's that aren't dotted, the commas that are missing, the semicolons, the punctuation, we'll find it and point it out shamelessly, and I'm going to keep doing that. I have fun. I honestly did enjoy that brief time where I was being the publisher of the regional's newsletter too. That was a fun challenge. I looked forward to it, but I realized also I had to let it go. It was a temporary fill in the blank operation, and I learned some things, and I think other people learned as well. So if we all learn stuff, that's pretty successful. I'll take that. Learn something every day. I'm good with that. I can work with that.
Martin, it's been my honor to be with you this evening and meet your friends and have an opportunity to get to know you. I can't thank you enough on behalf of the hobby community for everything that you've done and continue to do for this hobby. I hope you never stop publishing. Hope you never stop writing. Most of all, I hope you never stop building. I think you're an inspiration the way that you can explain how you build and how you're constructing your models, I think helps an awful lot of modelers. And I hope you do it for many, many more years. So thank you so much for being here this evening. And please continue what you're doing for our hobby. We need you.
Okay, well, I can try.
Well, that's great. That's great. Well, thank you too to all of the YouTube viewers tonight. I hope you enjoyed the show. Hope you learned a little bit about Martin and the contributions that he's made and is making today to our great hobby. Hope you'll subscribe to our YouTube channel, New Tracks Modeling. Ring the bell and click on all so that you'll be notified of all of our future shows and you can join us again in the future. Also, I hope you'll subscribe to our website, newtracksmodeling.com, and you'll get all of the Zoom login links each week for our Wednesday shows that are at 7 p.m. Eastern Time every Wednesday. Lastly, we have a scholarship program that we're promoting for high school students who are continuing their education in a STEAM program. You can find out all the information about our scholarship program and hopefully donate to it from our website, newtracksmodeling.com. And again, thank you so much for being here this evening. We really do appreciate it. Hope you've enjoyed meeting Martin Brechbiel.